Welcome, viewers, to a Back from Mission edition of Photos from the Fire. And today I am pleased to have Eileen McInnes on set with us. Welcome, Eileen.
Thank you.
Eileen McInnes, just to tell you a little bit about her, she grew up in Dartmouth, the child of Joseph and Mary, and no, I'm not kidding. Married to Monty Mosier for 32 years, proud mother of Dr. Samuel Mosier and Kate Mosier, who is our own creative specialist here at Chalice. Eileen is the associate producer at CBC, and she has been the director of Information Morning on CBC Radio 1 for 30 years. That's a long time.
That is a very long time.
And she is a longtime member of St. Vincent de Paul Parish. Eileen actually volunteered for Chalice's mission to Tanzania this past October. It was a wonderful trip.
It was.
I heard from many people that it really was quite something. Why did you decide to do that? That was quite a big jump for you.
It was a big jump. It was a big jump in a lot of ways. As soon as I heard that Chalice was doing missions, I thought, oh, that's something, you know. But there's a lot of things in our lives where we go, oh yeah, someday, and we never do. This one came about because, as you mentioned, my daughter works for Chalice, so I knew that she would be going on the trip. I wanted to pick the right trip to share with her, and Tanzania was it just fell into place. It just seemed to be the right time and the right place.
When Chalice is looking for volunteers, they're particularly looking for people who have a heart for service. Did you feel that you had that, and did you feel that you left Tanzania with a bigger heart for service?
I think what I saw there was that the little moments that are the most intimate and I hope the most profound. And we had an afternoon at a school. We were helping with the gardening, and they needed us to put manure around some fairly young plants. And Martha, who was with me, we were lugging manure and putting it around the plants. And Martha kept sort of looking over at the women whose garden it was, who were kind of just sitting there. And I kind of made a joke. I sort of said, well, yeah, they're just thinking, let the Canadians do it, right? And after a while, she went over and she spoke with them. And she came back and she was laughing. And she said, that's exactly what they're saying. They said, Mama Martha, we've been working this field for 2 months. They said, the ground is hard and we are tired. So we'll let you work today. And you talk about a heart for service. Like, if I did nothing else in my whole trip, I gave that handful of women a chance to sit and chat in the shade for an hour instead of working in the garden.
The mission trip was to Tanzania for a reason. There are lots of issues and problems there. What impression of Tanzania did you leave with? What are your reflections on Tanzania?
We spent most of our time in the rural areas, and which are poor. So obviously you can't be there and not have an impression of poverty. But that's not the lasting impression that I walk away with. I walk away with an impression of tremendous kindness and hospitality and peacefulness. I had a long conversation with one man about raising children, how the whole community raises the child. And I said, you know, in the Western world, we'd get in trouble if we disciplined somebody else's child. And they were like, no, this is... we are all family. And I just thought, we do not have it all figured out. The mission trip is the whole point of it, as I learned really early on. The whole point is that you're immersed. So it's not like you go to the school and do this program with the youth for your mission and then come home and do something else. The whole where we were staying, some of the challenges we had, even with our accommodations, even with getting from place to place, the remarkable number of hours we spent on the bus, that's all mission. Because you come to see that you have to understand those challenges or those differences at least, before you can even begin to think that you're understanding anything about the people that you're meeting.
Mm-hmm. What really showed my Western bias was when you told me about the man and the working with the gravel.
We had an opportunity to visit a Chalice farm, which was a little bit off the beaten track, and we had to walk in because the bus couldn't make it down. And as we were walking back, there was a man sitting there, and he was sitting with his legs sticking out with something in front of him. So I said to the guide who was with us, I said, "What's he doing?" He said, "He's making gravel." And I was like, "What?" So they exposed these big chunks of whatever the rock is, and he had a setup in front of him where he was literally taking these big pieces of rock with a hammer and breaking them into smaller pieces of rock. And he had a pile of gravel in front of him. Mm-hmm. And I didn't stop to talk because we were on our way and the sun was going down, but I thought, like, what did you do today, dear? Mm-hmm. I made this pile of gravel or this pile of gravel. I'm not sure if it was beautiful or sad, but there's certainly something to be learned in that.
Your experience with the women cooking, and especially the unself-conscious nature in which they went about doing it. Could you tell us about that?
It was always the little moments of mission that really struck me. And so these women came to teach us traditional cooking. They thought we were hysterical because we were terrible at it. But of course, they do everything by hand. Mm-hmm. And so they were preparing, I don't know, it looked like an herb to me, but they were calling it a vegetable. It was a green. And they had to strip it from the things. And it's like we're all like one at a time. And they're doing this, and they're chatting, and they're talking, and they're doing all this. And then they had to make the sauce that they were making. They had to beat it. So she had a mortar and pestle, and she was talking large amounts. So basically, she ground it for an hour, like pounding, at least an hour. And we were talking afterwards, and she said, "Do you cook?" And I was like, "Not like that." I mean, we would put it in a food processor. It would be finished in 15 seconds, right? But to them, that was the work of their hands. And they were talking, and they were laughing, and they were enjoying each other's company. So the end product was important, but it wasn't the only thing happening, right?
Did any of that rub off on you?
Oh, I hope so. It's really difficult. But yes, I would think, I had several conversations in Tanzania where when people are speaking to you, they reach out and they take your hand. And they literally hold your hand while they're talking to you. I thought, how many times do I walk by somebody and say, "How are you?" Yeah. I don't even make eye contact, let alone hand contact, so many times. So that stuck with me. So I'm hoping that a little bit of that will rub off on me and that I can be a little bit more present to the people around me. First time we went to Mass, the entire congregation was standing outside to welcome us. And they're singing and they're dancing and they're touching you and they're reaching out and they want to hug you and they want to kiss you and coming off the bus, the first few times, it's like, oh, holy cow, what do I do with this, right? It was unlike anything I had ever felt. And the welcoming ceremonies sometimes went on for hours. And at first I was kind of like, oh my gosh, are we ever going to get to what we're doing here? But the truth is I learned, that's mission. And there's a lesson, everybody gets to speak. It's okay if it takes 2 hours because we're going to let everybody speak. It takes a lot of guts to just put yourself out there, even to someone you don't know, and sometimes even to people you do know. Somebody would take my hand, look me in the eyes, and say, "Pray for me." Wow. Okay. Sure. That's close. That's intimate.
And one of the ways in which you responded was a group of you washed feet.
We knew that we were going to encounter some seniors, and so we were trying to think of things to do. So we had this idea, because I knew they had done it on another mission, to just wash feet. And it was partly service, but it was really just because it felt nice. Like really, I thought, well, this is something that I can do easily, and it's just nice. As soon as we put on rubber gloves and knelt down before them, they said to Martha, who was translating, that they thought we were doctors because nobody had ever tended to them. And at first they were very like, shy about it. And by the time we were done, they were like, oh, yeah, And one of the men said, he said, how come they don't talk about this at church? And I said, well, they do. I said, on Holy Thursday at home, Christ washes the feet of the apostles, so our priests, they don't do that in Tanzania. So then I told them that the Pope does it as well on Holy Thursday. They were pretty impressed with that, but they had never seen it before. And after we left, after I left, the translator heard one of the men saying to the women, did you know that Jesus did this and that the Pope did this? I
couldn't believe it when you told me that they broke the 1 hour rule for Mass.
Yeah, 2.5, 3 hours. It's just very different, when they're gathering for Mass, at least in the communities that we were in, that's the only time all week that they're all going to get together, right? And many of them don't have phones or any other means of communication. So it's very much a community gathering, but they also, to look at them, nobody has anything else to do. I'm sure they have 100 things to do, but they just come with that openness of, we're here, we're together, and that's where what I saw throughout the whole trip is like, when you're together, you're together. Nothing else, don't worry about that stuff. We're together, and we're going to be together as long as we can be. So there was, I would love to see it. Somebody try a 2.5 hour or 3 hour Mass. But within that Mass, there's community announcements, there's catechesis, there's fundraising campaigns, there's dancing, there's singing, there's, so it's not just it's not the strict liturgy or, an hour of homily. It's a whole community meeting.
Tell us about the offertory, especially the humble offering nature of it.
At one of the parishes we were at, they did 2 collections, and rather than somebody coming around with a basket, people come up and they put their money in. So after the money donations were made, then they had the other collection, and people brought gifts, whatever they had. They would bring a bag of peanuts, or we saw a lot of live chickens. They would bring what they had. And through one of those processions that I was watching them, and I was just blown away that they were just so free and happy to give what they were giving. They were singing and dancing as they're going up. And there was one quite elderly woman who walked up, and she had an egg. Like that was her offering. And to me, that was just like, talk about the widow's mite, right? You give what you have. And what struck me was that there was no, oh, well, I only have an egg, so I'm not going to show you what I have because you have more. Or there was no shame in this was what she had, and she was offering it with pride and joy. And those were the little moments of mission that made me go, yeah. We often use the expression, lay it on the altar. If you have troubles, if you have someone, that you want to pray with, lay them on the altar. Well, like they literally are laying the work of their hands on the altar.
You also mentioned that you're trying to remember how you phrased it. Your understanding of God is far from a complete picture. Did this mission trip help to at least somewhat fill in that picture?
Yeah. That was a really big lesson of this. And so we all have these ideas in our head about everything, about what we should wear, about what food is good, we have preconceived ideas that have been, we may have made those decisions for ourselves. Those decisions have probably been shaped by what we've seen and heard over the years, why this shampoo is better than, like all of these decisions that we make, often we make those choices every day without thinking about why we've made those choices. And in our faith, we all have ideas of who God is. Even visually, what does God look like? What does God feel like? What would Jesus look like? What would he say? And we have these notions. We don't always think that we have these notions, and they're probably based on all kinds of things that we've seen and heard. But whatever we think, whatever we think about our faith, we think it's true. We think it's an absolute. It's our vision. It's not untrue, obviously, but it's not complete. And so to have an opportunity to be with people who probably have a completely different concept of what faith in God means, what sacrifice means, what suffering means. It doesn't change, it doesn't make one thing right or wrong, but it broadens my understanding of what it means to be faithful. What it means for me to be faithful is not the same as what it means for someone else to be faithful. Even talking with looking at Tanzania, where people are living sometimes in very, very dire poverty, what does the word blessing mean? Like, just think about it, right?
Well, we throw that word around quite a bit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What does grace mean? So again, and their version is not right or wrong, but it really helped me to think about all of the ideas I had of what I mean when I say God is good, or what I mean when I say have faith in your suffering.
How would you sum up this experience, and would you consider a second trip?
Yes, I would absolutely consider another trip. I would sum it up as demanding in a beautiful way. I think I learned a lot. I think I prepared well. I think I use the expression, it's sort of a spiritual adventure tourism. So it's not for everybody. I mean, not everybody wants to climb a mountain when they go on vacation. Not everybody wants to be challenged and learn in this particular way. But if you're up for kind of an emotional and spiritual adventure, I think it's an amazing opportunity to learn about yourself and to learn about other people.
And keeping in mind, of course, that it's not a trip, it's not a vacation, it's something totally unique. What advice would you give to someone who is starting to feel a calling for going on a mission trip?
Listen to the Holy Spirit. Talk to people. The Joanne, who runs the Chalice missions, is gifted in so many ways. If you hear the calling, answer. Maybe you're not being called to that particular trip. Maybe you're not being called at all, but explore it, because it's a gift that you give yourself as well as other people.
Well, it's been so good talking to you. Such a wealth of reflection and everything. It's been a real treat. Thanks a lot.
My pleasure.
So I invite you to leave your comments below if you have any questions or comments, and let's continue this conversation. Let's open it up. You've been listening to a conversation with Eileen McGinnis. So long, and God bless.